Hi, Christopher Isaac here, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about a question that was asked in our Facebook group, the Social Academy for Women. And the question was asked, what is it about relationships that you want help with? And that was asked by one of our coaches, Jared Gannam. So great question, Jared. And the responses that we got from the women in the group were 4 universals, basically, that they wanted help with trust, vulnerability, support, and intimacy. And so I thought I'd make a video to explain how to achieve that, how to really build that from scratch with a potential partner, a long-time partner, a dying relationship, how to rebuild it basically, and go from there and really just try to offer value in that way. So firstly, I wanted to address basically why relationships lack those 4 things. Again, trust, vulnerability, support, and intimacy. And honestly, from a psychological perspective, those things break down when people start to get selfish or complacent, when people start to think about themselves rather than their partner. And so it's kind of tricky because on the one hand, we do teach to have standards and to make sure that people live up to those standards that you have for them, right? But it's kind of a gray area. It's a fine line because what you don't want is you don't want to have so much expectations on the other person that they basically can't feel like they can live up to anything that you expect of them. In fact, when we go into relationships to get something, right? Get positive feelings, get connection, overcome feelings of loneliness or being alone or bored or what have you, then we're not actually there to give, which is incredibly important to remember. Because if we go into a relationship to give, then we can build something. If we're getting, we're just taking value. And so in order to build trust, intimacy, support, and vulnerability, we have to be able to give these things to our partner and know that our partner will give those things back to us as well. It's not a place to get, it's a place to give. Anyway, so why do men not give those things? Why do men typically struggle with those 4 qualities? And I think it has a lot to do with the difference in the male and female psychology. So women, generally speaking, are a little bit more open. They are more emotionally open, they're more emotionally sensitive, and they're more attentive to another person's needs, and they're more attentive to nonverbal cues and body language, that sort of thing. Men, on the other hand, not so much. They're a little bit more selfish, and I don't want to put men in a box that they can't escape from. That's not at all what I'm trying to do. But I do want you to understand that the psychology between men and women are very different. Men tend to think women are a lot more like men than they actually are. And respectively, women tend to think men are a lot more like women than they actually are. So you have to understand that you guys are fundamentally different. Men and women are fundamentally different. There's masculine and there's feminine energies, and there's so much we can talk about, but I have to brush over kind of like the surface area of them to make sure that we cover it all. Men lie because, well, I'm not gonna say men lie. Men struggle with these things because they often aren't rewarded for telling the truth. I can tell you the amount of men that secretly have fantasies of having multiple women and wanting to be significant and sexually attractive, may or may not be shocking to some of you. But the point is that men don't express those things, right? There's a lot of them that want to have open relationships and aren't comfortable communicating it because they just want a girlfriend, to be honest with you. And so then they get a girlfriend and then stupidly they go off and do other things because they have one sense of security here, and now they're just trying to build a level of significance within themselves by attracting other women as well. So that's one stupid thing men do. And that, of course, destroys any trust, vulnerability, support, or intimacy. The way to overcome this is, one, by really figuring out what your partner wants. Who you choose as a partner is incredibly important, and knowing the type of person that you're choosing. So it's not just enough to say he's a great guy, he's really exciting, you know, he gives me butterflies. Those are all great qualities. But if you don't know what he actually wants from a partner, then unfortunately you might be destined to maybe struggle to fulfill those needs. And that brings me to the other subject of this conversation, which is something that Tony calls the 6 human needs. Tony Robbins calls the 6 human needs. And those needs are certainty. So we all need certainty. We need certainty that we're going to have an income, paycheck coming in. We need certainty that the roof isn't going to collapse above us. We need certainty that people are going to drive in their lanes. We need certainty to function. And when our sense of certainty gets destroyed, things tend to get a little hectic in our lives. That being said, if we were certain about everything all the time, life would get very boring. And so there's the second human need, which is for variety or uncertainty. And we often like to say that, you know, the variety that we want, the excitement that we want, you know, those surprises, those are great. But what about the surprises we don't want? Well, we call those problems. And unfortunately, you can't have one without the other. So the second human need is for variety or uncertainty. The third human need is for significance, right? Who needs to feel significant, important? Everybody. And the fourth human need is love and connection. Now, there's 2 forms of this, right? Love is a deeper form. Connection is more surface level. You know, you can sleep with someone and it can be a superficial exchange. That's more connection. There's not really intimacy, love, trust, connection, support. I shouldn't say connection, love. That's a much deeper level. Connection's more the breadcrumbs of that. And so, yeah, that's one way to achieve trust, vulnerability, support, and intimacy. And we'll go into that here in a second. The 5th human need is for growth. It's growth. And then the 6th human need is for contribution. So the idea being that if we're not growing, if we feel like we're stagnant in life, we're not doing anything, oftentimes we kind of feel like we're dying inside, like we're not doing anything with our lives. And then the 6th being contribution is that, you know, if we're thinking about ourselves constantly, we're not maximizing our life. In fact, the greatest gifts and the greatest experiences that many of us have in life are the ones that we get to share with others. And that's the whole point of contribution. And so going back to my original point is that when relationships start to fail, it's usually because of selfish thinking, me thinking. It has to do with not meeting these 6 human needs on a deep level for your partner. So it's not about getting something from your partner, it's about giving. And really it's about giving these 6 human needs on a deep level for your partner. Fun fact, if a human being feels that any one thing, person, experience meets 3 or more of these 6 human needs on a high level, high being, if you judged it on a scale of 1 to 10, it'd be a 7 or higher, that thing will become an addiction over time. And so the idea is that you want to become an addiction for your partner. You want to become an addiction for your partner by meeting these 6 qualities at a 7 or higher, and by creating an environment where your partner is free to be vulnerable. Also understanding that you, being a feminine woman, might be fundamentally different than how a masculine man expresses himself, right? One of the common mistakes that people make, men make especially, is that they think money and love are sort of the same thing, right? Like if you buy people presents, if you buy things, or if you show your affection to someone, you do so by giving gifts, giving things. And honestly, it's great. It's usually really appreciated, but in a long-term relationship, that can usually destroy any sort of trust, vulnerability, support, or intimacy, because buying something might be an expression of love. However, it's not going to sustain a relationship. And quite frankly, it doesn't meet the 6 human needs on a very high level at all. At best, you get variety at a high level. Yeah, so if you think about the 6 human needs and how to meet them for your partner, how to give to your partner, what you'll often find is that your partner wants to reciprocate. Now, there is a caveat to this. If you're in a relationship where things are starting to die in your romance and your passion, I would challenge you for 90 days, basically, to try to meet your partner's needs on the highest level, 7 or higher, and see how they respond. See if things start to turn around. The problem is when people start to get selfish, right? They get into that me thinking, you hurt me, you pissed me off, you did X, Y, Z. Those may be justified thoughts. They may be justified actions to pull back. However, when both people start to do that, it's just a matter of time before that relationship dies completely. It's a dissipating cycle, basically, where both energies are pulling away and they're not coming together. So you have to decide, do you want to fix this or do you want to be right? Your partner has to decide, do they want to be right or do they want to be in love? And if you choose love, if you choose the right partner, then just trust and have faith that by giving these things to them on the highest level will transform their view of you completely, will ensure that you have trust, vulnerability, support, and intimacy on the highest level. And a lot of that has to do with the way you communicate. Different people communicate differently during different times of stress. So for example, when we're at our best, it's easy to be lovey-dovey with your partner and communicate in a way that of course they're going to appreciate. However, when you're stressed because you feel like they're not living up to your expectations, when they're not pulling their weight in the relationship, when they're not doing basic chores and you feel like you have to do everything to sustain the house and they're playing video games or hanging out with friends or being irresponsible or just kind of slacking off, those are the moments where you're going to be stressed and tested and you're going to make it about you and damn him and that divide, there it goes again, and you're not meeting your partner's needs at a high level. And so it's easy to get frustrated in those moments, but understand and almost expect that they're not going to respond well to that. My challenge would be to take a moment in those times of stress, in those moments where you feel like you're angry, upset, hurt, jealous, frustrated, annoyed, anything, any negative emotion regarding your partner. Take a moment, take a step back and really just have a conversation with them, but really ask yourself first, what is the outcome that I'm trying to achieve? I think that's the most important question you can ask before starting an important conversation. What is the outcome that I'm trying to achieve? And be very specific about that. Because if you're fighting just for the sake of fighting, you're not trying to achieve any outcome. If the outcome you're trying to achieve is, look, I love you, I'm frustrated, I'm tired as hell, I understand you want to play video games, I'd love to unwind too, but please can you just put that down, do some dishes, help me out, and then we can maybe cuddle together. I'd love that. What do you think? That's going to come off very differently, extremely differently. He's going to respond very differently to that, assuming that he's not a selfish person. If he's someone that loves you and cares about you and isn't totally selfish, he's not going to roll his eyes and be like, fuck, fine. Then you might not be in the right relationship with the right person. That might be a very selfish person, unfortunately. And unfortunately, we have a lot of clients and a lot of friends and family that I know personally that have found themselves in those sorts of relationships. And again, who you pick is probably the most important thing. You can change, you can transform your relationship for the better, but understand that is going to take time and it's going to take a lot of patience on your part. And if you want trust, vulnerability, support, and intimacy, then you have to be willing to work at it because it is going to be difficult. Anyway, I love you. I hope this helps you. The 6 human needs, again, are certainty, variety, significance, love, connection, growth, and contribution. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this helps you, and until next time.